Last Tuesday, I had a conversation that made my skin crawl, not because of what they said, but because of what was missing. The person sitting across from me looked human, sounded human, but something fundamental was absent. What exactly separates us from them? The phone rang at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Most teenagers would ignore it, but Jake was already awake, cramming for his chemistry test, surrounded by empty energy drink cans and crumpled notes. He grabbed his phone without checking the caller ID. "Hello," he mumbled. "Hello," came the response. Same voice, same tired inflection, same slight crack on the second syllable. Jake pulled the phone away from his ear and stared at it. That was his voice. Not similar, identical. He pressed the phone back to his ear, heart hammering. "Who is this? You're scared of presenting in Mrs. Patterson's English class tomorrow," the voice said. Jake's voice. "You practiced your speech about Hamlet 17 times in the mirror tonight. You stumbled on the word soliloquy every single time." The room suddenly felt smaller. Jake hadn't told anyone about his presentation anxiety. He'd been practicing in his locked bedroom, with the music turned up so his parents couldn't hear. "You also threw away that love letter you wrote to Sarah Mitchell," the voice continued, eerily calm. "Wrote it on blue notebook paper, tore it up into exactly 12 pieces, put it in the kitchen trash can under the coffee grounds so nobody would find it." Jake's throat went dry. He had done exactly that 3 hours ago. The coffee grounds trick was something he'd never done before tonight. "Stop," he whispered. "You're wondering how I know these things," the voice said, and Jake could swear he heard himself smile through the phone. "But you're not asking the right question." "What's the right question?" The words tumbled out before Jake could stop them. "The right question is why I'm telling you." The line went dead. Jake sat frozen for 20 minutes, staring at his phone screen. Finally he called his best friend Marcus. "Dude, it's almost 3 a.m. Marcus groaned. "Did you just call me, like 5 minutes ago? Are you insane? I've been asleep since 11. Jake tried calling 3 more friends. None of them had called him. None of them had even been awake. The next morning, Jake's hands shook as he scrolled through his phone records. He checked 3 times, then a 4th. According to his call log, he'd received no calls between midnight and 6 a.m. The conversation that had lasted nearly 10 minutes didn't exist, but the memory burned crystal clear in his mind. That voice knew things nobody else knew. Personal things, secret things, things he'd never spoken aloud. Well, here's the thing about voices that sound exactly like yours. They don't just know your secrets, they know why you keep them secret in the first place. And sometimes when you're alone in a hospital waiting room at 3 a.m., you discover that voices aren't the only things that can perfectly mimic what makes you human. Margaret clutched her purse tighter as she settled into the uncomfortable plastic chair. The hospital waiting room buzzed with its usual symphony of hushed conversations and squeaky sneakers on linoleum. Her mum was having routine surgery, nothing serious, but hospitals still made her nervous. That's when he sat down beside her. The man appeared ordinary enough at first glance. Middle-aged, wearing a grey sweater that looked like it came from a discount store. But something felt off immediately. He positioned himself with mechanical precision, like someone carefully placing a chess piece. His hands rested on his knees at perfect right angles. "Waiting for someone?" he asked without looking at her. Margaret nodded, stealing a sideways glance. The man stared straight ahead with an intensity that made her skin crawl. His eyes never moved. Not once. She'd been watching for 5 minutes now, and he hadn't blinked either, not even when the fluorescent lights flickered overhead. "Your mother, Margaret Ann Sullivan, born June 15, 1962, admitted at 2:47 p.m. for gallbladder removal," he said, matter-of-factly. Her blood went cold. She hadn't told him her name. Hell, she hadn't even spoken to anyone except the receptionist, and that was 20 minutes ago at the front desk. "How do you have 2 cats. Whiskers died last month. You cried for 3 days." His voice carried no emotion whatsoever, like he was reading from a grocery list. "Your sister lives in Portland. She calls every Tuesday at 8 p.m. You usually let it go to voicemail because she complains about her husband." Margaret's mouth went dry. These weren't things you could guess or overhear. These were intimate details from her private life. "Who are you?" she whispered. The man finally turned toward her, though his neck moved with an odd mechanical quality. His skin looked waxy under the harsh lighting, too smooth for someone his apparent age. When he smiled, it seemed delayed, like his face was receiving instructions from somewhere else. "You're afraid your mother won't wake up from the anesthesia," he continued, ignoring her question entirely. "You've been afraid of that since your father's surgery went wrong in 1998. You blame yourself for encouraging him to get that procedure." Tears stung her eyes. She'd never told anyone about that guilt, not her therapist, not her best friend, nobody. Then something impossible happened. The conversation simply ended. Not because either of them stopped talking, but because the man was gone. One second he was there asking about her deepest fears, the next second she was staring at an empty chair. Margaret rushed to the security desk, breathless and shaking. The guard pulled up the waiting room footage with a bored expression that quickly changed to confusion. He rewound the tape 3 times, checking different camera angles. "Ma'am, you've been sitting alone this entire time. That seat's been empty for hours." But Margaret knew she hadn't imagined it. She felt different now, like something had been carefully extracted from inside her chest. Speaking of impossible conversations, wait until you hear about the taxi driver who never made eye contact. David's night shift at the loading dock ended like any other Tuesday, exhausted, slightly annoyed, and craving his bed. The industrial district felt dead at midnight. No buses running this late, and his usual rideshare app showed 0 drivers nearby. Classic. Then he spotted the yellow taxi idling under a broken streetlight. Lucky break, right? David waved it down and slid into the back seat, immediately noticing something odd. The driver never turned around, never made eye contact through the rearview mirror either. "Where to?" came a muffled voice from the front. David rattled off his address, a simple 15-minute drive through the main roads. But here's where things got interesting. The driver completely ignored the GPS system mounted on the dashboard, and took a hard left into the warehouse district instead. David figured maybe there was construction or an accident ahead. Drivers know shortcuts after all. Well, this shortcut felt more like a maze. They wound through narrow back alleys David had never seen before, despite living in this city for 8 years. The streetlights seemed dimmer here, some weren't working at all. The weird part, his phone's GPS couldn't even figure out where they were, just showed a blank grey area. But the real kicker was the meter. David glanced at it during a particularly sharp turn, and did a double take. The numbers were going backward. Started at $12.50 when he got in, now reading $9.30. He blinked hard, thinking maybe exhaustion was messing with his vision. Nope, still counting down like some bizarre reverse lottery. "Hey, your meter's broken," David called out. The driver's head tilted slightly but no response. Just kept driving through these ghost town streets that shouldn't exist. David started feeling genuinely uncomfortable. Where were they even going? This was taking way longer than 15 minutes. Finally, after what felt like an hour of wrong turns and backwards counting, they pulled up to David's apartment building. The meter now read $3.75. David fumbled for his wallet, but the driver waved him off with a gloved hand. "No charge tonight," came that same muffled voice. David grabbed his work bag and practically jumped out of the cab. He wanted to say thanks, maybe ask about those weird back roads, but when he turned around to face the street, his reflection in the apartment building's glass doors showed something impossible. The curb behind him was completely empty. No yellow taxi, no headlights disappearing down the block, nothing, just him standing alone on the sidewalk at 1:30 a.m. Later that morning, David checked his banking app out of curiosity. No taxi charge, no rideshare payment, no record of any transportation expense from the previous night. His phone's location history showed him leaving work, then magically appearing at home 45 minutes later with no travel data in between. Some shortcuts, apparently, don't exist on any map. But what happens when the rides themselves start bending reality? That's exactly what one retail worker discovered during their next encounter with the impossible. Sarah's shift at the electronics store was dragging, another Tuesday evening with barely any customers. Then she walked in. The woman approached the smartphone display with movements that seemed off. Her skin looked too perfect, almost like it was molded from expensive plastic. Smooth, flawless, unsettling. Her eyes reminded Sarah of those creepy dolls her grandmother collected, glassy and staring, but never really seeing anything. "Good evening," the woman said in a voice that sounded like it came from a computer trying to be human. "I require assistance with mobile communication devices." "Who talks like that?" Sarah forced a smile. "Sure, what kind of phone are you looking for?" The woman turned her head towards Sarah, but it took a full 3 seconds. Like her brain had to process the question. Send signals to her neck muscles. then execute the movement. I need one that connects to networks efficiently. Well, that narrows it down to every phone ever made. Sarah grabbed an iPhone from the display. This one's really popular. Great camera, fast internet. Acceptable, the woman interrupted, reaching for the phone. Her fingers moved in the same delayed way. Grab command sent. Fingers responding, mission accomplished. Sarah tried to make small talk while setting up the purchase, getting this for work or personal use. Personal activities and standard human interactions. Standard human interactions. Sarah glanced up at the security camera mounted above them. The red recording light flickered, then went completely dark. That was weird. The system had been working fine all day. The woman handed over a credit card without being asked. No fumbling through a purse, no checking her wallet, just produced it like she'd been holding it the entire time. The name on the card read Patricia Johnson, generic as vanilla ice cream. Sarah swiped the card through the reader, approved immediately. She handed it back and started bagging the phone. You'll love this model. My sister has the same one, and when she looked up, the woman was gone. Just gone. The credit card had vanished from Sarah's hand too. She checked the bag, empty. The phone sat back on the display like it had never moved. Her manager walked over, looking confused. Sarah, who were you talking to? The customer who just bought this phone. She pointed at the empty space where the woman had stood. What customer? You've been standing here alone for 20 minutes. Sarah checked the register. No sale recorded. She pulled up the security footage on the back office computer, rewinding to 5 minutes ago. The screen showed her talking to absolutely no one, gesturing at products, bagging air, but she could still remember that plastic skin, those glassy eyes, that mechanical voice asking about standard human interactions. Maybe some encounters aren't meant to leave evidence. Maybe they're just meant to leave questions that follow you home, making you wonder what else walks among us undetected. Speaking of undetected, some meetings happen in the most ordinary places. Tommy kicks a rock down the sidewalk, heading toward Riverside Park after another boring Tuesday at school. The bench near the old oak tree sits empty, perfect for some peace before dinner. He drops his backpack and settles in, pulling out his phone to scroll through messages. Nice day, isn't it? The voice comes from his left. An older man sits on the other end of the bench, wearing a grey coat that looks expensive but old-fashioned. Tommy doesn't remember seeing him arrive, but maybe he was distracted by his phone. Yeah, pretty nice, Tommy replies. Pretty nice, the man echoes back, nodding slowly. Strange response, but whatever. Tommy keeps scrolling, but the man speaks again. School was good today. Not really. Math test kicked my butt. Math test kicked my butt. The man's voice carries the exact same tone, like he's playing back a recording. Tommy looks up from his phone. The guy stares straight ahead at the playground, never turning toward the sun even though it's sitting low and bright in the sky. Most people squint or look away, but this man doesn't seem bothered at all. You always repeat what people say? Tommy asks, trying to keep things light. The man laughs, not at the question, just laughs. A hollow sound that doesn't match anything funny happening around them. Kids are playing on swings, dogs are barking, normal park stuff, nothing worth laughing at. Here, the man says, reaching into his coat pocket. Take this. He pulls out a smooth dark stone about the size of a quarter. Looks ordinary enough, like something you'd find by a river. Tommy takes it without thinking much about it. The second the stone touches his palm, ice shoots through his fingers. Not just cold, freezing cold, like grabbing an ice cube from the freezer. He nearly drops it but manages to shove the stone into his jacket pocket instead. Thanks, I guess, Tommy mutters, flexing his fingers to get feeling back into them. But when he looks up, the bench is empty. The man is gone. No footsteps, no rustling leaves, nothing to show which direction he went. Tommy checks his phone. Only 3 minutes have passed since he sat down. How does someone just vanish like that? Walking home, he keeps touching his pocket where the stone sits, still cold, even through the fabric. The next morning, Tommy decides to swing by the park before school. Maybe he imagined how weird everything felt yesterday. Maybe the guy was just some eccentric old man who likes playing word games with teenagers. The oak tree stands exactly where it always has, but the bench is gone, not moved, not broken, completely gone, like it never existed. Tommy walks around the tree twice, checking for any sign that a bench ever sat there. The grass grows evenly, no worn spots or bolt holes in the ground. He reaches into his pocket for the stone, but finds nothing except lint. Speaking of things that shouldn't exist, Wait until you hear about the party guest who somehow talked to 5 different people at the exact same time. House parties are supposed to be chaotic, right? Music blasting, people laughing, someone always spilling something on the carpet. What they're not supposed to have is mysterious guests who nobody invited, but somehow everyone noticed. Sarah's birthday party started normal enough. 23 friends crammed into her apartment, the usual mix of college buddies and work friends. But around 10 p.m., people began asking the same weird question, who's that guy by the kitchen? The man looked ordinary at first glance. Average height, dark hair, wearing a simple button-down shirt that could have come from any store. Nothing screamy or obviously wrong about him. Yet something felt off in a way that made your skin crawl without knowing why. He moved differently than everyone else. While guests bounced between conversations, laughed loudly, and gestured wildly with their drinks, this guy glided. Seriously glided. Like he was on invisible wheels, weaving through the crowded rooms without bumping into anyone, or even brushing against furniture. Then there's the food situation, which gets really strange. Party guests demolish snacks like locusts, especially free pizza and chips. But this mystery man never touched anything. Never held a drink, never grabbed food, never even pretended to eat. His hands stayed empty the entire night, yet nobody questioned it until later. The conversations he had were the creepiest part. Instead of typical party small talk about work or weekend plans, he asked deeply personal questions that made people uncomfortable. What's the thing that scares you most when you're alone at night? He'd ask someone he'd just met, or tell me about the worst mistake you think you've made. Most people would walk away after questions like that. But here's where it gets bizarre. Several guests swore they had long conversations with him, opening up about fears and regrets they'd never shared with close friends. Then he'd vanish mid-sentence, leaving them standing there confused about why they'd revealed so much to a stranger. Multiple people claimed they were talking to him simultaneously in different rooms. Jessica insisted she spent 20 minutes with him in the living room discussing her anxiety about her parents' divorce. At the exact same time, Marcus was convinced he was deep in conversation with the same guy in the bedroom about his fear of failure at his new job. When Sarah started taking group photos later that night, things got even weirder. Everyone would pose together, smiling and making faces like normal party guests. But when the photos developed on her phone, something was wrong with the mystery man. Sometimes he appeared blurry while everyone else looked crystal clear. Other times he was completely missing from shots where people distinctly remembered him standing right there. The strangest part, nobody could agree on when he actually left. One minute he was there asking uncomfortable questions, the next minute gone without saying goodbye. But speaking of mysterious disappearances, wait until you hear about the helpful stranger at the train station, who seemed to know everyone's schedule better than the conductors themselves. Sarah stared at the departure board, completely lost. The train station sprawled like a maze around her, with platforms branching off in directions that made no sense. Her connecting train was supposed to leave in 20 minutes, but she couldn't even find the right track. Need help, dear? An elderly man appeared beside her, clutching a worn leather bag against his chest. His grip never loosened, like the bag contained something precious. Maybe it did. His smile seemed genuine enough, and honestly, Sarah was desperate. I'm trying to get to track 12, she said. The signs are confusing. Follow me. His voice carried a strange authority. But we need to hurry. Train 847 leaves in exactly 18 minutes and 37 seconds. That was oddly specific. Sarah checked her phone. He was right down to the second. Lucky guess probably. They walked through corridors she hadn't noticed before. The man moved with surprising speed for someone his age, never once adjusting his grip on that bag. Sarah had to jog to keep up. There's construction on the main route, he explained. Platform 7 will be delayed by 4 minutes. Platform 3 has a signal malfunction. His predictions rolled off his tongue like he'd memorized a script. How do you know all this? Sarah asked, breathing hard. The man turned his head slightly. What's your name, dear? Weird question, but whatever. Sarah Chen. Mine is 4772918357421983752114. He rattled off the numbers without pausing. Most people just call me, well, they don't. Sarah blinked. That's not really a name, isn't it? The bag seemed to pulse against his chest. Names are just labels anyway. They reached a staircase she definitely hadn't seen on any station map. The man climbed steadily, his breathing never changing. Sarah's lungs burned, but she followed. What choice did she have? Platform 9 announcement in 3, 2, 1. The intercom crackled to life. Attention passengers. Platform 9 service is temporarily suspended due to technical difficulties. Sarah stopped walking. You said that would happen. Did I? The man's smile widened. Time works differently when you pay attention. They emerged onto track 12 just as Sarah's train pulled in. Perfect timing. The man stood beside her, that bag still pressed against his chest like armor. Thank you so much, Sarah said, reaching for her luggage. I never would have found this without. Her words died. The announcement system echoed the man's exact phrase. Time works differently when you pay attention. Same words, same inflection, like someone had recorded him speaking. Sarah spun around, but the man was backing toward the wall, not walking, gliding. His form seemed to blur at the edges, becoming less solid with each step. The train's whistle shrieked, drowning out her gasp as he simply merged into the concrete. The doors slid open behind her. Other passengers pushed past, chatting normally, seeing nothing unusual. But then again, some encounters leave you questioning what normal even means anymore, especially when technology itself starts playing tricks. Sarah's inbox pinged at 2:47 a.m. The sender, Dr. Montgomery, her academic advisor. Nothing unusual there, except for one tiny detail. Dr. Montgomery had been dead for 3 years. The email seemed normal enough. Dear Miss Chen, I trust your studies progress well. Tomorrow's lecture on Victorian literature will be cancelled due to Professor Harrison's sudden illness. Best regards, Dr. M. Sarah almost deleted it as spam, but something made her pause. Professor Harrison taught her Tuesday morning class. Tuesday arrived. Professor Harrison's assistant announced the cancellation. Food poisoning, apparently. Sarah stared at her phone, rereading the email. Lucky guess, right? Had to be. Then came the second message. The cafeteria will serve fish today. I advise against it. The new student, Marcus, will approach you near the library steps at precisely 3:15 p.m. He seems pleasant enough. The timestamp showed the email arrived at exactly midnight. Not 12:01 or 11:59. Exactly midnight. Well, the cafeteria did serve fish. And at 3:15, a guy named Marcus did walk up to her by the library steps, asked for directions to the chemistry building. The language in these emails felt off though. Who writes, I trust your studies progress well anymore? Dr. Montgomery used to talk like that in person, but these phrases seemed even more formal, almost Victorian. The word choices reminded her of old novels, like someone was trying to sound modern, but kept slipping into outdated speech patterns. Sarah decided to test this mysterious correspondent. She replied asking who this really was, and how they knew these things. The response came back in 14 seconds, not minutes, seconds. My dear student, some knowledge transcends the boundaries of conventional explanation. Tomorrow wear your red jacket. The weather will turn unexpectedly cold at 11 a.m. She checked the forecast. Sunny and warm all day, but something about the certainty in that message made her grab the red jacket anyway. At exactly 11 a.m., storm clouds rolled in from nowhere. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in minutes. That's when Sarah marched straight to the IT department. The tech guy, Dave, scratched his head while staring at his screen. This email address doesn't exist in our system. Never has. I'm running traces on the domain, the IP, everything. It's like these messages are coming from a server that isn't there. The emails kept arriving. Each one predicted something small but specific. A pop quiz in biology, a broken elevator in the East Building, the exact time the fire alarm would malfunction. Never anything huge or life-changing, just tiny glimpses into tomorrow. But here's the really strange part. Dave called Sarah a week later, voice shaking. The email account had vanished overnight, not just deactivated or blocked, completely erased from existence. Every trace, every digital footprint, gone. Even the emails in Sarah's inbox had disappeared. The predictions stopped coming, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, something was still watching, still knowing what came next. And if mysterious advisors could reach through digital space with impossible knowledge, what other boundaries were being crossed without anyone noticing?